release of Dune 2, I have seen a lot of discourse online about people not understanding the themes of the movie and just generally people lacking media literacy in general. Now, I have not watched Dune 2. I watched the first one, did not really enjoy it, and so I didn't really want to put myself through another one of those films. But I can appreciate the complexity and the importance of the themes that are being explored in the film. The people who are fans of Dune are very, very passionate about it, and occasionally very mean. Now, this isn't true about all fans of those films, but some of them have taken to saying that anyone who doesn't like the films are unintelligent and just don't understand, which isn't really the case because some people can understand it and just still not really like the production of it. Many people have chimed in on this discourse and made claims that the reason that people are lacking in media literacy is due in part to social media, that it has made it so that our attention spans are shorter, we believe anything that we see at first glance, and it doesn't encourage us to think deeper. And while this may be partially the case, I actually want to contest this a little bit, because the truth is, we've never been great at spotting satire. There have always been people who have been able to read between the lines and have been able to see that something is satire or not encouraging certain values, but instead is criticizing them. But there's also always been people who have completely missed the point on this. And to prove to you that it is not a new issue and that it's not stemming primarily from social media, I want to take you all on a little journey through time so we can explore the way that people have been missing satire for ages. Let's start by going back to the 90s. In 1999, the novel Fight Club was adapted into film. Both the novel and the film present many different themes and satirize many different ideas. It criticizes both consumerism and anti-consumerism. And you are not meant to agree with the protagonists, but instead are meant to understand that they are over the top and not the people you would want to be a role model. There's actually so much exploration into the themes and interpretations of this film that there is actually a Wikipedia page solely dedicated to interpretations of the film. However, despite the fact that these characters are not meant to be ideal people, some people seem to miss this concept. And you may say, oh, that's just something new with social media, but that's actually not the case, because when the film came out in 1999, some critics were actually concerned that it would cause copycat violence and crime, much like what happened with the release of A Clockwork Orange in 1971. Both A Clockwork Orange and Fight Club are violent satires, which utilize this grotesque display of violence to try and actually comment on how bad these things are. But what ends up happening is that there are some people, even back in 1971, who completely miss the fact that this is not encouraging this behavior, and instead start doing the things that the characters are doing. Another satire also based on a violent satire novel is American Psycho, which came out in the year 2000. The 2000 film adaptation of this 1991 novel was not hiding the fact that it was satire. In fact, Christian Bale, who plays the protagonist of the film, even criticized some of the promotion of the film because he said that the movie, quote, should attract an audience that can appreciate intelligent satire. It's not a slasher flick. End quote. Unfortunately, that is not the crowd that it seems to have drawn. To this day, you are still seeing people online who are idolizing the capitalist nature of Patrick Bateman's character without realizing that the novel and the film are directly criticizing the culture that surrounds it. I can't find much evidence that this film was so misunderstood when it was released, but it is possible that this was also true back then. If not, I think that that primarily has to do with the fact that it was fairly known that the novel was a satire, so people going into the film would know what they were getting themselves into. Whereas today, if we look back at films like A Clockwork Orange or Fight Club or American Psycho, some people might not even realize they're based on books. And this is also true for other films that people have not read the books for. If you don't know what the book is about and you're going into something completely blind, then it is going to leave you open to misinterpretations simply because you don't have this primary knowledge of the story. But maybe you're sitting there seething and typing into the comments as I speak, actually, you've you've proven nothing because all the examples you've given have primarily been, misunderstood on social media. So actually social media is a big influence. Okay, you want to go back further? Fine. 1729. In 1729, Irish writer and clergyman Jonathan Swift published his satire essay, A Modest Proposal, in response to the Protestant ascendancy. If you're not familiar with the Protestant ascendancy, basically what happened is that Ireland was Catholic, while England was Protestant. Now, England didn't like the fact that they were Catholics, so what they started doing was taking land away from Irish Catholics and instead giving it to English Protestants. These English Protestants became landlords of the lands, while the Irish people became tenants who were grossly mistreated, and the English landlords were often not even present on their land, taking the money that came from the property and instead of putting it back into the Irish economy, putting it into the English economy of their home. Because of this, the economy started tanking, and there were many other issues, including mass poverty, food insecurity, and overpopulation. Swift's essay is a straight-faced satire which bluntly states that the way to fix this problem is to start selling the children of the poor to the upper class and using them for food and making leather. It is incredibly disgusting. It is so callous the way that he describes it, so mathematical and formulaic, and yet it gets the point across. He's basically just saying, you're already eating us alive, so why not start doing it literally? Now, there is evidence that his work was understood by the upper class. This is who he was targeting it at, and they understood it and they didn't like it. However, despite the fact that they understood that he was not being serious, they did still miss the point. Instead of interpreting it as a criticism of the way that the land was currently being handled and the way that it was negatively impacting the residents, they instead interpreted it as a joke. In fact, one response from Lord Bathurst shows him engaging in this joke, saying, quote, "I did immediately propose it to Lady Bathurst, as your advice, particularly for her last boy, which was born the plumpest, finest thing that could be seen," end quote. While spotting the joke, they are completely missing the point that it is meant to be criticism. And while they understood that it's not meant to be taken seriously, they still don't see that it's satire of them. Let's jump a little bit further, but talking about something similar to 1800. And I want to talk about the satire novel Castle Rackrent by Maria Edgeworth. Now, Edgeworth's father was one of these landlords. So Edgeworth understood the issues that came from bad landlords and absentee landlords as well. In Castle Rackrent, Edgeworth explores the lives of 4 heirs to the fictional Rackrent estate in Ireland through the eyes of their loyal steward, Thady. Despite Thady commenting on the many terrible acts that these landlords have committed, such as one locking up his wife for not sharing her jewels with him, and another completely gambling away everything that they have on the property, Thady refuses to see the Rackrents as anything other than perfect, and constantly comments about how good they are. And this complete contrast is meant to point out the fact that this loyalty is completely unplaced and the absolute absurdity of the way that these people are being treated. It's also worth noting that the name Rackrent itself is part of the joke, directly referencing the way that these landlords would rack up the rent prices. This novel also satirizes the English not having any sort of understanding about Irish life or culture. There are many moments in the novel where Thady or other Irish characters do things that are quite strange. Strange activities, strange daily rituals. At one point, Thady takes off his wig and uses it to wipe condensation off of a window in its seat. And there are footnotes at the bottom of the page which give information acting as if this is the way that Irish people do things. And it's meant to be ridiculous. It's meant to show the fact that English people just don't understand what is going on, and they will believe absolutely anything because they're never in Ireland. But the problem is a lot of English readers actually took this as fact. They completely missed the point that it was making fun of them for not knowing anything and believed it as completely being true and just thought, oh, the Irish are kind of weird, aren't they? So once again, the target of this satire, even back in the 1800s, completely missed that they were being satirized, instead taking it as being true. What we can draw from this is that people have always been bad at spotting when something is satire, especially when that satire is targeted targeted at them. And this has even been the case well before social media or even computers had even been widely available. When we look at the kinds of people who misunderstand satire, it's usually the very people who are being targeted by it. So I think the inability to spot satire or the misunderstanding of these kinds of themes comes specifically from the types of expectations that you have when going into a piece of media. Everyone has a confirmation bias. We have our own beliefs and opinions that we expect to be confirmed, and when they are, we're gonna take that more literally than if we were being criticized for it. Even if that opinion is, this movie is gonna be terrible and has awful political opinions. Even if that movie is satirizing those opinions, you might miss that it's satire because you're going into it with the expectation that they're being genuine. I don't think I can fully get rid of the influence of social media because social media is designed to keep you online for as long as possible, meaning it's going to want to show you more things that you agree with rather than things that are challenging your beliefs. This means that it is purposely encouraging us to continue this confirmation bias and to create echo chambers of our opinions, meaning we are going to be even less open to trying to actually see things that are challenging what we believe. So yes, social media does have an influence, but we cannot claim that it is the source of a lack of media literacy. Because looking at a couple of adaptations from the 90s or a couple of Georgian works of literature will prove to us that we've always been bad at spotting satire. Roll credits.